My name is Angela, and I'm 34 years old. For 8 years, I believed I had the perfect marriage with James, my investment banker husband. We had built a beautiful life together in Boston. But lately, something felt off. Late nights at the office, secretive phone calls, and passwords I suddenly didn't know. Then came the business trip to Chicago, where he packed his briefcase, kissed me goodbye, and disappeared. My gut screamed something was wrong. If you're watching from somewhere, your intuition saved you too. Hit that like button and subscribe. Let me show you how I turned the tables when my husband's lies unraveled in the most unexpected way. I met James at my college roommate's wedding in New York City. I was a bridesmaid, and he was a groomsman. When our eyes met across the venue during the reception, it felt like one of those movie moments where everything else blurs away. James was tall, confident, with dark hair, and the kind of smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He approached me with 2 glasses of champagne and a simple line, "I thought you might need this after that maid of honor speech." We spent the entire night talking. James was witty, intelligent, and seemed genuinely interested in everything I had to say. At the time, I was working as a junior marketing executive at a growing firm in Boston, and he listened intently as I rambled about campaigns and client challenges. Unlike other men I dated who glazed over when I talked about my career, James asked thoughtful questions and seemed impressed by my ambition. By the end of the night, we exchanged numbers, and within a week, James had driven from Manhattan to Boston just to take me to dinner. Our romance unfolded quickly after that. Weekend trips between our cities, long phone calls that lasted until sunrise, and that butterfly feeling I hadn't experienced since high school. What drew me to James wasn't just his charm or good looks. It was how he made me feel valued. He respected my career and encouraged my goals. When I landed a major client 3 months into our relationship, he surprised me with a weekend getaway to celebrate my success. "You're going places, Angela," he told me over candlelight dinner, "and I want to be right there with you." After 6 months of dating, long-distance James proposed during a sunset sail on Boston Harbor. He'd arranged to transfer to his firm's Boston office, saying he couldn't imagine being apart anymore. I said yes without hesitation. I felt like I'd found someone who truly saw me and loved me for exactly who I was. Our wedding was everything I dreamed of. A beautiful ceremony in Cape Cod, with the ocean as our backdrop. My father, a tough military man who rarely showed emotion, cried as he walked me down the aisle. My mother kept squeezing my hand and whispering, "He's a good one, Angela." Our friends gave heartfelt speeches about how perfectly matched we were. It felt like the beginning of something truly special. The early years of our marriage were blissful. We traveled extensively. Weekends in Vermont, a second honeymoon in Hawaii, exploring Italy on our first anniversary. We made a point to try new restaurants every Friday night, keeping date night sacred despite our busy schedules. James would surprise me with small gifts for no reason. A book by my favorite author, Wildflowers, picked on his way home, or tickets to a show I'd mentioned wanting to see. Together, we bought our dream brownstone in Boston's Back Bay neighborhood. It needed work, but we spent weekends painting walls, refinishing hardwood floors, and making it ours. Each room became a project we tackled together, laughing through the mistakes and celebrating our small victories. Our home became our sanctuary, filled with photos of our adventures and mementos from our travels. Our social life revolved around a tight-knit group of friends. Megan, my best friend since college, and her husband Ryan were practically family. We hosted dinner parties where James would show off his culinary skills while I mixed cocktails. Those evenings filled with laughter and conversation were some of my favorite memories. As my career advanced, James seemed genuinely proud. When I was promoted to senior marketing director, he threw a surprise party with all our friends. "To the smartest woman I know," he toasted that night, "the company is lucky to have you." While his own career as an investment banker demanded long hours, he always made time to hear about my day and offer advice on workplace challenges. There were small signs of James's workaholic tendencies even then. Occasional late nights at the office or working through a weekend to close a deal. But he always communicated, always checked in, always made it up to me with his full attention when he was home. I understood the demands of his profession and supported him just as he supported me. When I made partner at my firm 5 years into our marriage, it felt like we were both exactly where we wanted to be. We discussed starting a family, began researching good school districts, and talked about our future children with excitement. James would joke about raising little marketing and finance prodigies, Those conversations were filled with hope and possibility. I remember our last truly happy period so clearly. We took a 2-week vacation to Greece to celebrate my partnership, exploring ancient ruins, swimming in crystal blue waters, and enjoying long dinners under the stars. James seemed relaxed and present in a way he hadn't been for months due to a big project at work. On our last night sitting on our hotel balcony, overlooking the Aegean Sea, he held my hand and said, "These are the moments that matter, Angela. Just you and me." I had no idea then how quickly everything would change. The shift in our marriage wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was more like watching someone slowly replace the man I married with a stranger who looked just like him. 6 months after our Greece trip, I found myself lying awake at night, wondering what had changed between us. It started with James coming home later and later. What was once a rare occurrence became routine. 8 o'clock turned into 9, then 10, sometimes midnight. His explanation seemed reasonable at first. Important client meetings, market volatility, requiring extended hours, a new junior analyst needing mentoring. I believed him because I had no reason not to. The physical distance grew alongside the emotional one. James, who once couldn't keep his hands off me, barely initiated intimacy anymore. When I approached him, he was often too tired or had early meetings the next day. Morning kisses became quick pecks, and our conversations shortened to logistical exchanges about household matters or schedules. One evening, while we were watching a movie, I noticed James tensing when his phone buzzed. He quickly turned it over screen down. When he went to the bathroom, curiosity got the better of me. I reached for his phone, only to discover a new password protected it. Since when did my husband need a password I didn't know? When I asked him about it later, he brushed it off, saying it was a new company security policy. Then came the secretive phone calls. James, who once took calls in front of me without a second thought, began stepping outside or into another room, speaking in hushed tones. Sometimes I caught fragments. "I can't talk now," or "I'll see you tomorrow." When he'd return, I'd ask casually who called, and he'd say, "Just work," or "Nobody important." Our joint credit card statements started showing expenses that raised questions. Dinners at upscale restaurants on nights he claimed to be working late with his team. A charge from a high-end jewelry store a week before my birthday, yet no jewelry appeared. When I asked, he said he'd bought a gift for his mother. $200 Uber rides across town when his office was only 20 minutes away. Weight began falling off me as my appetite disappeared under the stress. Sleep became elusive as I turned theories over in my mind each night. Dark circles formed under my eyes, and friends began asking if I was feeling well. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. One evening after James canceled our dinner plans for the 3rd time that month, I finally confronted him. "James, something's changed between us. You're distant, secretive, and I feel like I'm living with a stranger. What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked annoyed rather than concerned. "Nothing's changed, Angela. You're overreacting. Work is stressful right now, that's all. For 6 months straight, you're never home, you barely touch me anymore, and you're constantly on your phone. I'm not stupid, James." His expression hardened. "So now I'm lying to you, is that what you're saying? I'm killing myself at work so we can maintain this lifestyle, and this is the thanks I get." Accusations and interrogations when I'm exhausted. His defensiveness and deflection made me feel crazy for even asking. I apologized, which now seems ridiculous. I was apologizing for noticing my marriage was falling apart. The next day, I met Megan for coffee. After one look at my face, she knew something was wrong. "He's cheating, isn't he?" she asked bluntly after I detailed the changes. "I don't know," I admitted. "I have no proof, just a feeling and some suspicious behavior." "Hire a private investigator?" Megan suggested. My cousin used one when she suspected her husband. It gave her the answers she needed. The idea seemed extreme, like something from a movie rather than real life. "I can't spy on my husband," I protested. "He's already lying to you, Angela. You deserve to know the truth." I wasn't ready for that step. Instead, I decided to do some investigating myself. While James was showering one morning, I checked his briefcase and found receipts for weekend getaways to a lakeside resort in Vermont. During weekends, he'd told me he was at financial conferences. Another receipt showed a dinner for 2 with a $300 bottle of wine at a restaurant known for its romantic atmosphere. My heart felt like it was being crushed in a vice, but I still needed more evidence before confronting him. Then one evening, while doing laundry, I found it. a dress shirt with a faint smudge of red lipstick on the collar. I never wore red lipstick. Never. I sat on our bedroom floor holding that shirt for hours, tears silently streaming down my face. Part of me wanted to confront him immediately, throw the evidence in his face, and demand answers. But another part, perhaps the smarter part, told me to wait. To gather more information, to be strategic rather than emotional. 2 days later, James announced he had an extremely important business trip to Chicago coming up. The Stevens account is on the line, he explained, packing his designer suits carefully. The whole team is flying out. I'll be gone for 3 days. I nodded, smiled, and told him I'd miss him, all while my heart hammered against my ribs and my palms sweated. Because for the first time in our marriage, I knew with absolute certainty that my husband was lying to me. The moment James left for his business trip, I went straight to our home office and logged into our shared credit card account. I had a feeling, a terrible gut instinct, that this trip wasn't what he claimed. What I found confirmed my worst fears and set in motion the most pivotal 3 days of my life. There it was in black and white, a round-trip ticket to Chicago O'Hare International Airport in James's name, and a reservation at the Langham, a luxury hotel downtown. But what made my blood run cold was the second charge, another round-trip ticket purchased on the same day, same flight, under the name Samantha Pierce. I didn't know any Samantha Pierce, or did I? The name sounded vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. Scrolling further down the statement, I found another hotel charge that didn't match James's itinerary. A weekend getaway to Cape Cod the previous month, when he told me he was at a financial conference in New York. My hands trembled as I printed out the statements, creating a paper trail of my husband's deception. I called my sister Leah immediately. Unlike Megan, who advocated for private investigators, Leah had always been more direct. "You need to confront him right now," she said after I explained what I'd found. "Call him, tell him you know, and demand he come home." "And then what?" I asked. "He'll deny it, make up some excuse about booking a ticket for a colleague, and I'll be back at square one." "So what are you going to do?" The plan formed in my mind, even as I spoke it aloud. "I'm going to catch him in the act, in Chicago." "Angela, that's crazy," Leah protested. "You'll just hurt yourself more." "I need to see it with my own eyes," I insisted. "No more gaslighting, no more lies, no more making me feel like I'm losing my mind. I need the truth, whatever it is." After hanging up with Leah, I began planning methodically. First, I booked a flight to Chicago, departing 3 hours after James's. I used my personal credit card that he didn't have access to. Next, I called my boss and requested 2 emergency personal days, something I'd never done in all my years at the firm. She heard the strain in my voice and approved it without questions. I packed carefully, choosing clothes that would be comfortable for travel, but also appropriate for a confrontation in a luxury hotel. I included a stunning red dress that James had always loved, not because I wanted to win him back, but because I wanted him to remember exactly what he was throwing away. The morning of James's departure was surreal. He kissed me goodbye, told me he loved me, and promised to call when he landed. I smiled and played the role of supportive wife, while inside I felt nothing but cold determination. The tears in my eyes as I waved goodbye weren't from sadness, but from fury at his audacity. Once alone, I activated the location tracking app on our phones, a feature we'd set up years ago for safety. I watched as his dot moved to the airport, then disappeared during the flight, only to reappear in Chicago, exactly when expected. I confirmed the hotel address and memorized it. Megan came over while I finished packing. Unlike Leah, she fully supported my plan. "You need closure," she said, helping me choose which shoes to bring. "Whatever you find, at least you'll know. The not knowing is what destroys people." She helped me rehearse what I might say when confronted with the worst. We role-played scenarios, with Megan playing a defensive James while I practiced maintaining my composure. "Don't let him turn this around on you," she coached. "This is his betrayal, not your failure." As my own departure time approached, fear began to creep in. What if I was wrong? What if there was some innocent explanation I hadn't considered? What if I was about to destroy my marriage based on circumstantial evidence? The doubt was so overwhelming that I nearly canceled my flight. I sat on the edge of our bed, ticket in hand, frozen with indecision. Then my eyes fell on a photo from our wedding day. We looked so happy, so in love, so honest. I thought about the lipstick on his collar, the secret phone calls, the passwords, the unexplained charges, his emotional distance. I thought about how he'd made me question my own sanity for months. In that moment, my resolve hardened. Even if there was a 1% chance I was wrong, I needed to know. I deserved the truth. With that clarity, I grabbed my suitcase and headed to the airport. The flight to Chicago was the longest 2 hours of my life. I couldn't focus on the book I'd brought or the movie playing overhead. Instead, I kept checking the tracking app, watching James's dot remain stationary at the hotel. With each passing minute, my anxiety grew, but so did my determination. When we landed, I texted James casually asking how his meetings were going. His response came quickly. In strategy sessions all day, miss you. Another lie to add to the growing pile. I took a taxi from O'Hare to the Langham, rehearsing what I would say when I finally saw him. The driver must have noticed my tension because he asked if I was okay. I nearly laughed at the question. No, I wasn't okay. I was about to confront the man I loved about his infidelity in a hotel lobby, 800 miles from home. But I just nodded and said I was fine. As the Chicago skyline came into view, I took a deep breath and steeled myself. Whatever happened next would forever change the course of my life. There was no turning back now. The Langham Chicago stood tall and elegant against the afternoon sky, its glass exterior reflecting the clouds above. The taxi pulled up to the entrance, and I felt my heart rate accelerate. This was it, the moment of truth I'd been simultaneously dreading and craving for months. I entered the grand lobby with its soaring ceilings, marble floors, and sophisticated atmosphere. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over plush seating areas and art installations. Under different circumstances, I would have appreciated the luxury. Today it felt like an elaborate stage for the most painful scene of my life. I chose a strategic position. A corner seating area with a clear view of the main entrance, but partially obscured by a large floral arrangement. I ordered a sparkling water from a passing server to justify my presence and settled in to wait. According to the tracking app, James was somewhere in the building. His meetings would presumably end soon if they existed at all. 1 hour passed. Then 2. Doubt began to creep back in. What if I'd misread everything? What if James really was in meetings? What if I'd flown to Chicago on a paranoid whim only to make a fool of myself? I checked my watch repeatedly, contemplating how long to wait before admitting defeat. Just as I was considering abandoning my post, the main doors swung open, and there he was. My husband looking more relaxed and happy than I'd seen him in months. He was wearing his favorite navy suit, the one I'd helped him pick out for his last promotion. His arm was around a woman's waist in a gesture of easy intimacy that felt like a physical blow to my chest. She was stunning, tall, slender, with shoulder-length blonde hair and the confident stride of someone who knew her worth. She wore a fitted black dress that highlighted her figure perfectly, and red-soled heels that clicked rhythmically against the marble floor. They looked like they belonged together, like a power couple from a glossy magazine spread. They were laughing about something, completely absorbed in each other. I watched as James leaned down to whisper something in her ear, his lips brushing against her hair. She smiled up at him with adoration, placing her hand on his chest in a casual, possessive gesture. My body's reaction was visceral. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. My hands trembled uncontrollably, and a wave of nausea threatened to overwhelm me. I gripped the armrests of my chair, forcing myself to breathe, to stay present, to not fall apart. Not here, not now. I recognized the woman now. Samantha Pierce, James's new assistant, who he'd mentioned in passing a few times. The one he'd hired 6 months ago, exactly when our marriage began to change. Everything clicked into place with devastating clarity. I stood up on unsteady legs and stepped out from behind the floral arrangement. For a moment, I just watched them, still unnoticed. They stopped at the front desk, checked something on James's phone together, then turned toward the elevators. That's when it happened. James glanced across the lobby, a casual scan of his surroundings, and our eyes met. The change in his expression was immediate and dramatic. All color drained from his face. His smile vanished. His body went rigid. It was as if he'd seen a ghost. Samantha noticed the change and followed his gaze, confusion crossing her features as she tried to understand what had caused such a dramatic reaction. She looked at me, then back at James, clearly not comprehending the situation. I walked toward them with measured steps, focusing on keeping my posture straight and my head high. The distance between us seemed both endless and too short. I could see James's Adam's apple bob as he swallowed hard. He whispered something to Samantha, who immediately stepped back, her expression morphing from confusion to alarm. "Angela," James said, his voice strangled. "What are you doing here?" I smiled, surprised at my own calm. Hello, James. Surprise. I turned to Samantha, who was now looking between us with dawning comprehension. You must be Samantha. I'm Angela, James's wife. The word wife hit her like a physical blow. Her eyes widened and she took another step back. Wife, she repeated, staring at James. You said you were divorced. James looked like he might be sick. Samantha, this isn't… I can explain. Explain what exactly? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. How you've been lying to your wife for months, or how you've been lying to your girlfriend about not having a wife. Hotel guests and staff had begun to notice the unfolding drama. A few people slowed their pace, watching with poorly disguised interest. A concierge took a step in our direction, then thought better of it. Angela, please, James said, lowering his voice. Can we talk about this privately? Let's go somewhere quiet. Why are you embarrassed? I asked, loud enough for nearby people to hear. You weren't concerned about privacy when you charged romantic getaways to our joint credit card, or when you came home with another woman's lipstick on your collar. Samantha's face flushed with anger. You told me you were divorced for over a year, she said to James. You showed me divorce papers. That revelation was another knife to my heart. He had gone so far as to fabricate divorce documents to seduce this woman. The depth of his deception was staggering. I'm very much still his wife, I told her. Though not for much longer, I imagine. James reached for my arm. Angela, please, I'm begging you, let's talk privately. I stepped back, avoiding his touch. Don't you dare touch me. You lost that right when you decided to live a double life. I can explain everything, he pleaded, desperation in his eyes. I'm sure you can, I replied. You've always been good with explanations, but I'm not interested in more lies. Samantha had recovered from her initial shock and was now gathering her dignity around her like armor. I had no idea, she said to me, her voice tight with controlled emotion. He told me his divorce was finalized last year. He said his ex-wife had moved to California. I almost laughed at the absurdity of the lie. Well, as you can see, I'm very real and very much still in Boston, or I was until I decided to join my husband on his business trip. Samantha turned to James, her expression hardening. You're disgusting, she spat. Both of us deserved better than this. She grabbed her purse from where it had been tucked under his arm and stepped away. Don't call me, don't text me. We're done. As she walked away, her heels echoing across the marble floor, James looked panic-stricken, torn between following her and dealing with me. In that moment, I saw the truth so clearly. He was more upset about losing her than he was about being caught. Go ahead, I said, gesturing toward Samantha's retreating figure. Follow her. Show me exactly where your priorities lie. James stood frozen, unable to make a decision. In his hesitation, I found my answer. With one last look at the stranger who wore my husband's face, I turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in the middle of the lobby. Behind me, I heard him call my name, his voice breaking. I didn't look back. For the first time in months, I was seeing clearly. And what I saw was a future without James's lies at the center of it. I checked into a different hotel across town, a modest place nothing like the Langham's opulence. Once alone in my room, the composure I'd maintained in the lobby crumbled completely. I sank to the floor, back against the door, and let out sobs that seemed to come from the deepest part of me. Years of love, trust, and shared dreams lay shattered around me like broken glass. My phone buzzed relentlessly with texts and calls from James. I ignored them all, turning the device off completely after sending brief messages to Megan and Leah to let them know I was safe. In the silence of that anonymous hotel room, I allowed myself to feel every jagged edge of my pain without interruption. Morning found me hollow-eyed, but oddly calm. I decided to stay in Chicago for 2 days rather than rushing back to Boston. I needed space to think clearly away from the home that now felt contaminated by James's betrayal. I extended my hotel stay and ventured out into the city. That first day, I walked for hours along Lake Michigan, the vast expanse of water somehow soothing my turbulent emotions. The cool breeze off the lake cleared my head, and with each step, I felt myself growing stronger. This wasn't the end of my story, just the end of a chapter. I visited the Art Institute of Chicago, losing myself among masterpieces that had survived centuries of human drama. Standing before Monet's water lilies, I met an elderly woman who noticed my red-rimmed eyes. "Whatever it is, dear, you'll survive it," she said kindly. I've lived through war, losing my husband of 40 years and raising 3 children alone. The human heart is remarkably resilient. Her words stayed with me as I continued exploring the city. By the second day, I felt ready to check my phone again. 27 missed calls from James. Dozens of texts ranging from apologetic to desperate. I read them all with detached interest, as if they were messages from a stranger. In many ways, they were. "I'm so sorry, please let me explain. It wasn't what it looked like. I love you, not her. She means nothing. Tell me where you are. We need to talk. Angela, please, I'm begging you." The last message had come just an hour earlier. "I'm heading back to Boston. Please come home so we can talk. I'll explain everything." I booked a flight home for the following morning, steeling myself for the confrontation that awaited me. The woman I'd been before Chicago, insecure, confused, questioning my own perceptions, was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who wouldn't accept anything less than complete honesty. When my taxi pulled up to our brownstone the next evening, James's car was already in the driveway. I paused on the sidewalk, looking up at the home we'd created together. It seemed like a movie set now, an elaborate facade concealing the rot beneath. James opened the door before I could use my key. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, shirt wrinkled as if he'd slept in it. Good, I thought. Let him suffer. "Angela," he said, voice cracking. "Thank God you're home." I walked past him without a word, setting my suitcase by the stairs and removing my coat with deliberate movements. When I finally turned to face him, he was watching me with the desperate eyes of a drowning man. "I'm sorry," he blurted out. "I'm so sorry. It was a terrible mistake." "Which part?" I asked coolly. "Sleeping with your assistant, lying to me for months, or getting caught?" He flinched. "All of it. I never meant for any of this to happen." I laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. "Things don't just happen, James. You made choices. Hundreds of them. Every lie, every secret meeting, every time you touched her instead of me. Those were all choices." "I know," he admitted, tears filling his eyes. "I know, and I hate myself for it. But I love you, Angela. It was just a stupid affair. It meant nothing." 6 months isn't just anything," I replied. "And according to Samantha, you went so far as to fake divorce papers. That shows premeditation, not a momentary lapse in judgment." He ran his hands through his hair, agitated. "I was going to end it. I swear I was. It started as just flirtation at the office, then one drink after work, and before I knew it—" "Spare me the details," I cut him off. "How long has it really been going on, the full truth this time?" James hesitated, then seemed to deflate. 8 months, he admitted quietly. "Since I hired her." Another lie exposed. I nodded, unsurprised. "And the other women before her?" His head snapped up. "There weren't any others." "Don't insult my intelligence any further," I said. "The lipstick on your collar 2 months ago was a different shade than what Samantha was wearing in Chicago." He had no response to that, confirming my suspicion with his silence. "I need time and space," I said finally. "I'll be staying in the guest bedroom. Don't try to touch me. Don't try to explain further. I need to think." "Are you—" He swallowed hard. "Are you leaving me?" I looked at him, this stranger who had shared my bed for 8 years. "I don't know yet, but you should be prepared for that possibility." The next morning, I called a divorce attorney and scheduled a consultation for later that week. I told no one except Megan, not wanting advice or opinions, until I'd sorted through my own feelings. At work, I maintained a professional facade while processing my personal earthquake. James launched a campaign of reconciliation. Flowers appeared daily. Gifts were left outside the guest room door. Notes of apology tucked under my coffee cup. He suggested couples therapy, promised to quit his job to remove Samantha from our lives, begged for a second chance. I neither accepted nor rejected his efforts. Instead, I watched him, evaluating his sincerity with new, untrusting eyes. Was this genuine remorse, or just the panic of a man facing consequences? A week after Chicago, I received a call from Carol, James's mother. I'd always had a good relationship with her and dreaded this conversation, assuming she'd take her son's side. To my surprise, she didn't. "James told me everything," she said. "I want you to know that whatever you decide, I support you. What he did was unforgivable." "You're his mother," I said, confused by her stance. "Yes, and I raised him better than this," she replied firmly. "His father pulled the same stunt 20 years ago. I forgave him, and he did it again and again. Some patterns don't change, Angela. Her words haunted me as rumors began circulating at my firm. Someone had seen us in Chicago, and the gossip spread. I held my head high, focusing on my work while colleagues whispered behind my back. My boss called me into her office one afternoon. "Your personal life is your business," she said kindly. "But if you need time off or support of any kind, just say the word." I thanked her but declined. Work was my sanctuary. Now, the one place where I still felt competent and in control. As the days passed and my initial shock faded, a cold clarity took its place. This marriage couldn't be saved. Not because James had slept with another woman, but because he had systematically lied to me for nearly a year, making me question my own sanity in the process. The final revelation came when I discovered additional credit card statements James had hidden, showing hotel stays dating back over a year with multiple women. The affairs hadn't started with Samantha. She was merely the latest in a pattern. When I confronted him with this evidence, James finally stopped denying and broke down completely. "I need help," he admitted through tears. "I've been living a double life for so long I don't even know who I am anymore." For the first time since Chicago, I felt something other than anger, a glimmer of pity for the broken man before me. But pity wasn't enough to rebuild a marriage on. The decision I'd been approaching for weeks solidified in that moment. It was time to let go. The day I told James I wanted a divorce was surprisingly calm. We sat at our kitchen table where we'd shared countless meals and conversations now, strangers occupying the same space. "I've made my decision," I said simply. "I'm filing for divorce." He nodded as if he'd been expecting this. "I understand," he said quietly. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry for everything. I'll give you whatever you want." "I don't want anything from you except honesty during this process," I replied. "And for you to move out within the week." "Of course," he agreed, not meeting my eyes. "Can I ask, is there any chance at all if I get therapy? Make real changes?" I considered the question carefully. "The trust is gone, James. Without trust, there's nothing to rebuild." He moved out 3 days later, taking only personal items and leaving our shared home largely intact. The brownstone felt both emptier and somehow lighter without his presence. That night, I walked through each room assessing what I wanted to change. The master bedroom where we'd slept would be repainted first, I decided. No more beige walls he'd insisted on. I wanted bold blue, the color of clear skies and new beginnings. My divorce attorney, Catherine, was a sharp-minded woman in her 50s who specialized in high-net-worth separations. "Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state," she explained during our first meeting. "Given the length of your marriage and his infidelity, we're in a strong position." Initially, James agreed to a fair settlement. Then something shifted. Perhaps reality set in, or maybe his own attorney advised a more aggressive stance. Suddenly, he was contesting the division of assets, claiming his higher income entitled him to keep more of our joint investments. The cooperative facade crumbled, revealing the self-serving man beneath. "He's going to fight dirty," Catherine warned after receiving his counterproposal. "Are you prepared for that?" "Absolutely," I replied without hesitation. "I've been fighting for months just to get the truth. This is nothing new." The negotiation process became contentious. James argued that his career had been the primary financial contributor to our lifestyle, conveniently forgetting the promotions I'd earned and the substantial income I brought to our marriage. When his initial approach failed, he tried guilt, sending late-night emails reminiscing about our happy times and questioning how I could throw it all away. I stood firm, refusing to engage with his emotional manipulation. Catherine was impressed by my resolve. "Most clients waver at this stage," she observed. "You're remarkably clear-headed." "Clarity comes after betrayal," I told her. "There's no more confusion about who he really is." Unexpectedly, support came from James's sister Rachel, who reached out to me directly. Over coffee one afternoon, she revealed what I'd suspected but never confirmed. "This isn't the first time," Rachel said, stirring her latte absently. "In college, he cheated on every girlfriend he had. We all hoped marriage would change him, but—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "Why tell me this now?" I asked. "Because he's telling the family you're being unreasonable," she explained. "I wanted you to know at least one of us sees the truth." Her validation strengthened my resolve during the difficult months that followed. The divorce process ground slowly forward with each financial disclosure, revealing more about the extent of James's deception. He had hidden accounts I never knew, about investments made without my knowledge, Even a small apartment in New York he claimed was for business trips. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding my life. I joined a support group for divorced women, finding solidarity among others who understood the unique pain of marital betrayal. In therapy, I processed not just the end of my marriage, but the gaslighting I'd endured for months. "You're not grieving the relationship you had," my therapist observed. "You're grieving the relationship you thought you had. There's a difference." She was right. I wasn't mourning James. I was mourning the husband I believed him to be, the marriage I thought was real. Understanding this distinction helped me move forward. I threw myself into work, channeling my energy into creative campaigns that earned recognition throughout the industry. My focus and drive increased, rather than diminished by personal turmoil. My boss noted the change in a performance review. "Whatever fire this has lit under you," she said carefully, "it's resulting in your best work yet." At home, I reclaimed my space. I replaced our bed with a new one, repainted rooms, and rearranged furniture. I purged his remaining belongings, donating suits he'd left behind, and removing photos from walls. Each change felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. 6 months into the divorce process, I felt ready to consider dating again. My first attempt was disastrous. A dinner with a colleague's friend where I spent most of the evening comparing him to James and finding similarities that weren't really there. I left early, realizing I wasn't as ready as I'd thought. Instead of forcing romance, I rediscovered old passions. I joined a local photography club, rekindling a hobby I'd abandoned years earlier. I took weekend trips to places James had never been interested in visiting. I reconnected with friends who had drifted away during my marriage. The first holiday season alone loomed as a potential emotional landmine. Thanksgiving at my parents' house brought well-meaning but painful questions about the divorce. Christmas shopping meant one less person on my list. New Year's Eve, traditionally our special celebration, stretched before me like an empty road. Megan insisted I join her annual holiday party, promising to run interference if conversations turned uncomfortable. I agreed reluctantly, only to find myself actually enjoying the evening, until James appeared unexpectedly. He'd remained friends with Megan's husband, and had apparently been invited without my knowledge. He approached me as I stood alone by the Christmas tree, looking better than he had any right to. Well-dressed, well-groomed, apparently thriving despite the divorce proceedings. "You look beautiful, Angela," he said softly. "I've missed you." "You shouldn't be here," I replied, keeping my voice even. "Not when I'm here." "I didn't know you were coming," he claimed, though the look in his eyes suggested otherwise. "But now that we're both here, could we talk just for a few minutes?" Perhaps it was the holiday spirit, or maybe curiosity about what he could possibly say after everything, but I agreed to step outside onto the porch with him. The December air was crisp, our breath forming small clouds between us. "I'm still in therapy," he began. "I'm making real changes, learning why I did what I did." "That's good for you," I said neutrally. "I hope it helps." "It is helping," he insisted, "and it's made me realize even more clearly what I threw away. We could try again, Angela. Start fresh. I'm not the same man who hurt you." I studied his face, searching for signs of the James I'd fallen in love with years ago. He looked sincere, his eyes pleading. For one brief moment, I allowed myself to imagine reconciliation, returning to our home together, rebuilding trust, day by day, perhaps eventually finding happiness again. Then I remembered the lipstick on his collar, the secret phone calls, the credit card statements, Samantha's shock at learning he was married, the pattern that had started long before me and would likely continue long after. "No," I said simply. "We can't go back, and I don't want to." His expression hardened slightly. "You're making a mistake." "The mistake was believing you were someone you're not," I replied. "I'm not making that mistake again." I walked back into the party without looking back, feeling lighter than I had in months. That night marked a turning point. I no longer defined myself as James's betrayed wife, or even his soon-to-be ex-wife. I was simply Angela, stronger, wiser, and finally free. 11 months after that fateful day in Chicago, I sat in Catherine's office signing the final divorce papers. Each signature felt like closing a door on a room I no longer needed to enter. When I placed the pen down after the last page, Catherine smiled warmly. "Congratulations, Angela. You're officially divorced." The words washed over me with unexpected emotion, not sadness as I might have anticipated a year ago, but a profound relief tinged with something like pride. I had survived the unraveling of my life, and emerged intact on the other side. "How do you feel?" Catherine asked, gathering the documents. "Like I can breathe again," I answered honestly. "Like I'm finally free to be me without questioning everything." Outside her office, spring sunshine bathed Boston in golden light. I walked through the public garden, watching couples stroll hand in hand, children chasing pigeons, tourists taking photos of blooming flowers. Life continuing in all its messy, beautiful complexity. With the divorce finalized, the next step was selling our brownstone. Neither of us could afford to buy the other out, and the property held too many memories to keep anyway. The real estate market in Back Bay was hot, and we received multiple offers within days of listing. The profits would be split equally, providing each of us with a significant sum to begin again. I found a modern condo overlooking Boston Harbor, all clean lines and open spaces, with floor-to-ceiling windows that filled the rooms with light. It was nothing like the traditional brownstone James and I had shared. Exactly what I wanted. I furnished it slowly, choosing each piece with intention rather than rushing to fill empty spaces. My professional life continued to flourish. The energy and focus I'd channeled into work during the divorce proceedings resulted in a promotion to executive level, overseeing all major accounts for the firm. The increased responsibility came with a substantial salary increase, validating the independence I'd fought to maintain throughout my marriage. 6 months after the divorce, I was dining at a new restaurant with Megan when I spotted them. James and a petite brunette I didn't recognize seated in a corner booth looking intimate. For a moment, our eyes met across the room. He froze, clearly uncomfortable at the unexpected encounter. I simply nodded in acknowledgement and returned to my conversation. "Are you okay?" Megan asked, noticing the exchange. To my surprise, I was. "Perfectly fine," I replied and meant it. Seeing James with someone new stirred nothing in me. No jealousy, no anger, not even curiosity. The emotional ties had been completely severed. As spring turned to summer, I began dating again, this time with greater success. I met Michael, an architect with kind eyes and a quiet confidence, through a mutual friend's dinner party. Unlike my disastrous first post-divorce date, conversation with Michael flowed easily. He made me laugh, listened attentively, and showed genuine interest in my thoughts, without any hint of the competitiveness James had often displayed. On our third date, I told Michael about my divorce and the betrayal that ended my marriage. I expected the revelation to create awkwardness, but his response was refreshingly straightforward. "Thank you for trusting me with that," he said simply. "Their actions tell you everything about them, nothing about you." His wisdom and emotional maturity were like cool water in a desert. We began seeing each other regularly, taking things slowly, building a foundation of honesty that felt revolutionary after years of deception. Exactly 1 year after the confrontation in Chicago, I received an unexpected email from Samantha Pierce. Seeing her name in my inbox sent a jolt through me, curiosity overriding my initial impulse to delete without reading. "I hope this email finds you well," she wrote. "I've debated contacting you for months, but with the anniversary of that awful day approaching, I felt compelled to reach out. I want you to know that I truly had no idea James was married. The shock and betrayal I felt that day in the lobby must have been nothing compared to what you experienced, but it changed the course of my life too. I've since left the investment firm and moved back to my hometown in Vermont. I'm writing to apologize for my unwitting role in causing you pain and to thank you for the dignity with which you handled that confrontation. You showed me what real strength looks like. I wish you all the happiness you deserve going forward." I sat with the email for several days before responding. "Thank you for your message," I wrote back. "I never blamed you for James's choices. We were both deceived by someone we trusted. I'm glad you found a new path forward and appreciate your reaching out. Sometimes the most painful moments lead us exactly where we need to be. I wish you well." The exchange brought unexpected closure. Samantha and I had been cast as rivals in James's twisted narrative, but we were actually both victims of the same man's deception. A week later, I received news through mutual friends that Samantha wasn't the only one who had moved on. James's new girlfriend, the brunette from the restaurant, had ended their relationship after discovering text messages to yet another woman. The pattern continued just as his mother had predicted. Around the same time, I learned from Rachel that James had been passed over for a major promotion, his professional reputation damaged by rumors of his personal conduct. While I took no pleasure in his struggles, I recognized the justice in facing consequences for one's actions. My own life continued to evolve in positive directions. My relationship with Michael deepened, built on mutual respect and transparent communication. My friendships, especially with Megan and Leah, grew stronger through the crucible of crisis. My bond with my parents, somewhat distant during my marriage to James, rekindled as they supported me through the divorce. Most importantly, my relationship with myself transformed completely. The woman who had doubted her perceptions, who had apologized for asking reasonable questions, who had diminished herself to maintain peace, she was gone. In her place stood someone who trusted her intuition, who knew her worth, who refused to accept anything less than complete honesty. One evening, I ran into James at an industry networking event. It had been months since I'd seen him, and the encounter was surprisingly anticlimactic. We exchanged brief pleasantries like distant acquaintances, nothing more. As he walked away, I realized I felt absolutely nothing. No lingering attachment, no residual anger, not even indifference. He had become simply someone I used to know. That night, walking home along the harbor with the city lights reflecting on the water, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey from that hotel lobby in Chicago to this moment had been arduous, filled with pain and challenges I never anticipated facing. Yet I wouldn't change it. Every tear, every sleepless night, every difficult conversation had led me here, to a life authentically my own, built on my terms. The betrayal that once threatened to destroy me had instead revealed my strength. The lies meant to confuse me had ultimately led to clarity. The husband who broke my heart had inadvertently set me free. Looking back on everything now, I realize that confronting betrayal head-on in that Chicago hotel lobby saved me years of pain. If I hadn't trusted my instincts, if I hadn't booked that flight, if I hadn't positioned myself in that lobby, I might still be living in the dark, questioning my reality, while James continued his double life. The hardest lesson I learned through this journey wasn't about James's infidelity. It was about the importance of trusting myself. For months before Chicago, I'd felt something was wrong. The changes in his behavior, the emotional distance, the secretive habits. My intuition was screaming the truth. But I doubted myself, dismissed my concerns, and accepted his gaslighting because I wanted to believe in our marriage. Never again will I ignore those internal warning signals. Our bodies and minds recognize danger long before we're willing to consciously acknowledge it. That sick feeling in your stomach when something doesn't add up, that's wisdom, not paranoia. Setting and maintaining boundaries proved equally crucial. When James moved out, when he tried to manipulate the divorce negotiations, when he attempted reconciliation at the holiday party, each time I had to clearly define and defend my boundaries. It wasn't easy, especially after years of gradually compromising them to keep peace in our marriage. But with each small act of self-protection, I reclaimed pieces of my power. The support network that surrounded me made all the difference. Megan's unwavering loyalty, Leah's practical advice, my parents' quiet strength, my therapist's guidance, Catherine's legal expertise. I couldn't have navigated the aftermath alone. Even unexpected allies like James's mother and sister provided crucial validation when I needed it most. Building a new life hasn't been a linear process. There were days I took 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Moments when grief ambushed me in grocery store aisles or during commercials about happy families. Times when anger burned so hot I couldn't sleep. But gradually, the good days outnumbered the bad. Small victories accumulated into meaningful change. My relationship with Michael continues to evolve, teaching me that healthy love feels completely different from what I experienced with James. There's no anxiety, no need to check his phone, no walking on eggshells. Trust builds naturally when it's earned through consistent honesty rather than demanded, despite repeated lies. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about excusing someone's behavior or welcoming them back into your life. It's about releasing the hold their actions have on your heart. I've forgiven James not for his benefit, but for mine. Carrying anger and resentment was exhausting, taking valuable energy I needed for rebuilding. Most importantly, I've discovered that endings can be beginnings in disguise. The death of my marriage gave birth to a stronger, more authentic version of myself. The path I thought I wanted, children with James growing old together in our brownstone, wasn't actually the path that would fulfill me. Sometimes the universe redirects us through painful detours toward better destinations. If you're watching this because you suspect betrayal in your own relationship, or you're in the aftermath of discovering one, please know this: you will survive. The pain that feels unbearable now will eventually subside. The questions without answers will become less important. The person you are becoming through this trial will thank you for your courage. Trust your intuition, set firm boundaries, accept support, focus on healing rather than vengeance. Know that your worth isn't determined by someone else's ability to recognize it. And remember that sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Have you ever had to trust your gut instinct even when everyone told you that you were wrong? What did that experience teach you? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your experiences might help someone else going through something similar right now. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, the truth may hurt for a little while, but lies hurt forever.